He loves a spreadsheet.
Oh, that'll bore his tits off.
You're listening to Widowed AF with
Rosie Gilmoss.
and Lucinda Boast.
We've invited some members of the world's most exclusive club to bravely share their stories.
Join us for some honest conversations about living a different life, the crushing lows, the surprising highs, and everything in between.
Please note this is a podcast about death. Carefully read the episode descriptions and be kind to yourself.
But for now, welcome to our podcast.
Let's begin.
Hello and welcome back to Widowed AF. You're here with me and Lulu. We're going to just have a little bit of a chat about Monday's episode with Anthony and probably, have a little bit of a chat about our own lives and weeks. So, hi Lou, how are you?
I'm good. I can't believe we're at the end of another week. And I mean, we spoke to Anthony last week, so us two have had a while to marinate on his story, haven't we?
Yes.
And process it. But it's been interesting, the immediate response it's received since we released it on Monday.
Yeah, and quite a sort of visceral response, actually. I know personally, I had quite a difficult birth with one of my children, and Ben was, had that moment where I was taken off and put under a general anaesthetic and he had no idea what was going on. And I just remember the look on his face when I came round and how terrified he looked. But obviously I was okay and my child was okay. And you share these war stories in baby groups and toddler groups and at coffee mornings. And, so many of my friends and people I know had quite close calls during childbirth, but, survived. And then you hear about somebody not surviving and the reality of, how serious it can be and how dangerous giving birth can be. And it really, I don't know, it just makes you think actually in countries like the UK and America that people are still dying in childbirth.
It's shocking. And actually reading Anthony's story, I know that you've known him a few years already, but reading it, my first response was, that happens? That still happens? And then I researched the condition that Courtney had, which was amniotic fluid embolism, and it is very rare. But when it's happening, it's almost impossible for the medical staff to know what it is, because all they're seeing is that person isn't responding. So they won't have been able to even tell Anthony what was happening, which must have been so scary. And I could really hear that in his voice. He went to the hospital expecting to bring his wife and second baby home, and he came home initially without either of them. And there was no guarantee that Bobby was going to survive.
I think that really stuck with me, the thought of going in there together, so excited, and Darby being at home waiting, excited to meet her little brother, and then him having to walk out alone. It just sends chills down your spine, doesn't it? I mean,
He does.
Bobby was okay, but just what a horrific loss. We've had some really nice responses as well. His dad actually has sent a message via Anthony just saying how beautifully Anthony did and how well he portrayed Courtney and the children, and also that he'd made aware of Anthony's side of the loss, which I guess, particularly with men, we do talk about how men tend to be more private, and they almost feel like they don't have the right to speak of their loss when, these children have lost their mum, these people have lost their daughter. And I think to actually own your own grief and pain is a very powerful thing to do.
It is. And Anthony spoke about those initial moments of having to disseminate what had happened to his family, friends, his work colleagues, and almost counsel them through their reaction, because it was shocking and horrible. Even people at the bank in the city who he had to inform. And I got the impression that he kind of had to put his own emotions on hold in order to do that. And what a strong and massive-hearted man he is.
Yeah, you can hear the love, can't you? That's the and it is the kind of the common theme in all these stories we're hearing is the love for your person that has died, and even you still have some residual love, although you try and deny it. I know it's there, but also the love for for the people who have children, the love for their children, and the determination to get yourself through your own suffering in order to help them. But it does come at a cost, and that cost is so often the processing our own grief. And as I've spoken about prior, I'm going to be 5 years this month, and March is a very difficult one. My birthday's in March, Mother's Day is March, the last day we had together, and I'm going to be 42, which is unbelievable, I know. And Ben was 42 when he died, and I find this passing of time very, very strange. And the fact that I'm now only really beginning to process a lot of grief that I didn't in the beginning, because I masked it with all these coping mechanisms, like keeping myself busy, looking after the children, booze. And so I don't know, this work we do to protect the people we love, at some point, it does have a price to pay, doesn't it?
It definitely does. It catches up with you, whether you want it to or not. And that can be years down the line, months down the line. You have these episodes of grief. And for me, they've become fewer and further between and less intense.
Yeah, and it doesn't really seem to. I mean, it gets easier sort of day to day, but the grief attacks, they do still come. My mother-in-law, is her husband, so Ben's dad, died on exactly the same day as Ben, but 5 years prior. So this poor woman has got a 10-year and a 5-year anniversary coming up, and that's gonna sting a lot, isn't it?
And the kids with their milestones as well. Anthony spoke about Bobby, who he's raised from birth. I know he's had some wonderful support. He's got a living nanny, which is amazing. That's something that, he knows he's lucky to have. But Bobby has reached these milestones now where he's starting to ask about his mum. And Anthony described where Bobby had drawn a picture of a pregnant lady, and he said, that's me in cricket, the nanny's tummy. And he felt quite angry about his own mum, which was heartbreaking.
I know it is, and these little children, they just haven't got the words or the emotional maturity to process it, have they? We've just had the most enormous outpouring of love for Anthony and his kids. Loads of messages, loads of comments on social media, and it's been really lovely for him as well, I think, to put his story out, to be that brave and to have effectively like a massive hug, and a hug from all around the world, because people are engaging from Canada and Australia and New Zealand and America, and it's bringing this huge community of people together, which is, again, it's one of these unexpected benefits of the podcast that we didn't know we'd have.
No, exactly. And actually, we've had an influx of applications from international guests, which is wonderful. And it's so interesting to hear the different support systems in different countries. That's something that I'm really looking forward to exploring. It was fascinating hearing Anthony talk about even just the structure of the people that he worked for, the support that he was given there. Not all of us can relate to that. So it'll be interesting to explore those different stories.
Oh my goodness. We are actually booked up with guests until July, Lucinda.
What?
I know.
Cancel your holidays.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do one from holiday because I ain't cancelling.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've also had another voice message, which is so lovely. I do really enjoy listening to these, and we'll play you a little section. This is from Meg, who lives on the Isle of Man. And Meg lost her mum 18 years ago, but she really feels like the way we talk about the grief and the loss, it applies across so many different losses and forms of grief. And she seems like a very lovely lady, actually, because when a friend of hers lost their husband, and she bought her children some books about grief, but she also bought the same books for her own children so that they could understand and be kinder. And I thought, oh wow, isn't that just such a generous thing to do?
It really is, to have thought of that, and that must be so useful for friends of your kids.
So we're just going to play you a little clip of Meg here.
Watch my dad disappear and then re-emerge again. And so much of what you're saying rings so many bells with me, despite my loss not being the same as yours. And I'm so proud of you both sharing these stories and helping other people to share these stories so that it isn't a taboo and isn't a subject that is not talked about. You're speaking about life, and you're speaking about love that has nowhere to go for that specific person anymore. So that all is what grief is to me.
Oh, I absolutely love what she said there about, we're speaking about life and love that has nowhere to go. And isn't that just the most accurate description of so many people's grief?
It's interesting. The way that she puts that is so familiar for all of us, because the love doesn't just suddenly go overnight, and that person's energy doesn't just disappear into the ether either. It's left behind for a long, long time to come.
There's a saying, isn't there, that grief is love. It's what the love turns into. So instead of fighting it all the time, you have to sort of learn to coexist with it. And actually what you have to get rid of is the trauma and the anger and all the sort of negative emotions. That's what you can work through in therapy. But the one thing I have learned is that the grief ain't going anywhere. Like that,
Yeah,
you stuck with that.
exactly. I mean, for a long time, obviously, I was in shock after John died, but and felt all sorts of angry emotions. But I clung on to that love for as long as I could afterwards, and waited to kind of, well, I didn't wait, but I put off kind of dealing with the anger and the facts. You know, it took a long time for me to kind of let go of that love. For instance, I think I slept with a t-shirt of his for a while for no reason. I just wanted to feel close to him
Yeah.
until I was ready to face the shit that he'd done, basically.
So that's interesting. I don't think I really knew that. So initially, you were sort of more conventionally the grieving widow, and you were really sad and lost and loved your husband. And then what the anger sort of manifested later, did it? I don't think I knew that. Can you talk about that a
It
little
it
bit?
it kind of
Interesting.
it peppered into those early days, definitely. And I think you do rewrite history a little bit. I look back and say, I was just angry, I was just hurt, I was just shocked. But actually, you know, looking back, I did still love him, and there was an element of disbelief as well over what he'd done. I could see it in black and white on my computer screen, but I guess my heart didn't just stop loving him overnight. And so, yeah, those early days, I did. There was, a huge mixture of emotions. By the time the funeral came, it had been 6 weeks. So I'd had time to let those settle. And the anger, I think, was only just starting coming out then.
Yeah, I suppose also yes, the shock, and we realise now, we've talked to loads of our guests actually about this way the brain does very strange things. The pajamas, the bra, that making the police cups of tea. And I suppose perhaps in that moment, you were only able to process one part of what had happened at a time. So the primary loss was the loss of your husband, and
Yeah, exactly.
secondary and extra additional losses all came off of that, because then the loss of the person you knew and the life that you thought that you had. So yeah, I guess that does make sense, that initially you would have had the more conventional grief, which then would transition into the complex stuff. Oh look, I didn't expect to go that deep with you today, mate, sorry.
No, that's all right. It's nice to kind of unlock these memories, isn't it? Because I do think, for us, we're both a few years down the line, and certain stuff we'll have put away into a box and shut the box. But
Sure.
it's nice sometimes. God, I sound like my therapist now, but sometimes you've got to open that box, haven't you? Get everything out,
Yeah.
fold it up again, and put it back.
I realised that I'd promised to update people on the scattering of John's first wife's ashes, and it didn't feel appropriate because we were talking with Ellie from Dignity in Dying. It was very emotional, and watching the child that I view as a daughter cry, I can feel all the emotions now, picturing her. But it was one of those real cathartic cries, that we all know. And as adults, we know that they do us good. Nobody really wants to do it because it's so exhausting. We're used to being, trying to control these emotions. But she really let go, and John cried. And then they sort of came for a massive hug, and all of us, embraced them. And then we went and had fish and chips on the beach, and we bought Holly a little necklace made with some Whitby jet to bring home. And then we had some friends over to the Airbnb, and we actually had, I know it's a really weird thing to say, but we actually had the most fantastic little break together. And I think it united us that little bit more as a family. So it was emotional, but it was important. And I think that waiting until Holly was of an age that she could appreciate the magnitude of it, and also so she will remember it, and also wait until John was ready. And we do have a little bit of Sarah left in the cupboard to make into a piece of jewellery for Holly for when she's older as well.
I think that's lovely. That it just turned out to be the perfect moment for John and Holly to do that. So I'm so glad that you did.
Yeah, and it gives Holly somewhere that she can go. I love the idea of her taking future partners or mates to Whitby, and this is my special place. This is where we scattered my mum's ashes, and I think you do find that they need something like that. We have a stone up at a church. There's nothing really there because I don't have a body, but there is some little notes and that sort of thing that are buried under there, a sort of time capsule type thing, I suppose. And we don't go very often, but we will probably go up on the 12th, which is the anniversary. We'll probably stand awkwardly around this stone because it's kind of what we feel we're meant to do. I never really
It's hard though, isn't it?
do.
Do you have another place that you can go where maybe you and Ben went there? I'm fascinated by this idea of special places, what places where we can go to bring us comfort and bring back happy memories.
Well, you know what? I think I'm probably just going to go up to the coast. Probably home because we used to go there quite a lot with the kids. The kids love the arcades and all that. But and again, try and turn what is a really sad day into something where we all get together and have fun. But sometimes I do try and get over to see Ben's mum on the Isle of Wight, but it's not. I'm not able to this time. So we will definitely FaceTime her, and her and I will probably have a good old sob together. And it's the first anniversary that I'm facing sober. So, I mean, I was just sober last year, but it was very new. So not having that coping mechanism to lead to means that you got to feel these things, and it's going to sting, but I'll talk you all through it as we go. You can live it in real time with me over the next couple of weeks. Oh, hey, we didn't mention that it was your birthday on Monday, Lucinda's day, and it's actually mine tomorrow as well. So that's a lovely little quirk of our friendship. Our birthdays are so close together. So we are recording this on Wednesday to go out on Friday. So tomorrow will be Thursday, and we are going to, I'm putting this in here, so we have to do it. We're going to swim in the sea. So I say swim, we're going to get into the sea.
Briefly.
Yes. So we'll probably put some hideously unflattering photos of us in swimsuits on Instagram. So maybe we should just put like a little trigger warning on this.
Oh, brilliant. Can't wait. Now you've fully committed us to that. So
But if this doesn't go out until Friday, we could still edit it.
happy birthday, me.
And happy birthday, me. Right. On that note, thank you for listening, everybody. We will be back with you with a new episode on Monday. And if you would do us a favour and subscribe to our podcast, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for your support, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening today. We'll be back with you soon for more from the front line of loss.
But for now, as you were.